very good comments, and certainly reiterate those of support for the work that Teresa's done. 5 years thus far, she has been working in my office and working with the councillors to deliver the mayoral proposals, and she's done outstandingly well. So, Teresa, back to you. Wayne.
Sure, I'll speak to a few things. First of all, I'm entirely supportive of the myth-busting approach and also the pictorial way that it's communicated. I think that's excellent. It's very easy for people to understand. However, I think we need to go a little bit further than that and use that sort of approach, that pictorial approach, to address the transport targeted rates and the alternative ways of funding that transport targeted rate so it's easy to understand. The same approach could be taken around the rates for large farms. We could also have a pictorial timeline that indicates the point that the Deputy Mayor was making in terms of change in the rating system that we've had to deal with over time because of the government. And we could also have a pictorial approach to deal with the UAGC issue so that people can comprehend different levels of that quite simply. Because frankly, most people don't deal with numbers. They like to deal conceptually with pictures, and that presentation is highly desirable. So I would hope that we can do that and expand that approach. The other question or issue that I'd raise is just around communication. I certainly agree with the statements that Councillor Clough made. There are a number of councillors that support an alternative approach around the alternative transport targeted rate. Is there going to be a possibility of communicating other options on our website in places where people can find that information so that we can have a bit more of a public conversation around it? A place where people can post material, particularly material that's well supported with financial data.
Right, where's Matty? Is Matthew here? Matthew, do you want to come up?
Yes, we're doing all that.
So the short answer, Wayne, is yes.
Yes, we are.
So Councillor Penny, as the chair, would you like to just briefly answer that, and then perhaps Matthew?
Yes, unfortunately, while Councillor Walker was away in Paris, we did get a briefing.
Well, I mean, I was...
you were at the Green...
Good result, Wayne.
That was at my expense. It was an important thing to do.
It was me.
It was a good result, Wayne.
I object to the inference that's being made.
No, it's not. No,
It's a good result.
Councillor, I don't read that.
I was actually pointing out that he was in somewhere important. He just wasn't away.
That's it.
Which so many other councillors often are, when we had the briefing on the website. That's all I was going to say.
Right, Wayne,
so, Matthew...
Matthew, can you add anything to that?
I'm used to those cheap shots.
I'll just ask.
Stop.
It
Come
wasn't
on.
a cheap shot.
Well, that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, no, there's a little bit of sensitivity there, and really not necessary. Matt, where you go?
I'll just ask Aaron to make a couple of comments.
So, an answer, yes, there will be information available on the website, and we will be seeking feedback through social media. We have been putting a lot of emphasis to try and depict these things pictorially. So we will be bringing this information back to you in a workshop on the 4th of February next year, ahead of your decision making on the 10th.
Excellent. Very good. Well done. Thank you. Councillor Linda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for putting in E, which we can't see now, but I guess my reasons for wanting us to signal that we still are having ongoing conversations about the two reports are just to make sure that it is transparent. People do know it's happening. It's not hidden, and when and if any matters of significance are triggered, there will be full consultation around any decisions. And so I guess in light of Councillor Clough's comments around, we need to let people know what's happening, people need to have a say. Well, I would be really surprised if anyone voted against it, because it's actually just letting people know something that's already going to happen. So, I'm very pleased that we're going to be continuing to do that work, and very pleased there's also things that we can do highlighted in those reports that may mean we don't have to sell anything.
Yeah.
So I think it bodes well for us trying to find alternative ways of financing. Then we don't have to whack the businesses so hard with changing the ground rules for them as we did last year in terms of notching back the differential changes. But anyway, I'm very happy with that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, cheers. Councillor Cam.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I certainly concur with Councillor Cooper over that E. And a lot of people, and in fact those that might be thinking about voting against it, a lot of their political constituency will be looking for references to it and will be wanting to have their say. And so this actually enables them, and it gives some context for them to have their say, because regardless if we put it in or not, the public will be wanting to have their say because the reports are relatively recent and will be looking for it. So it gives some context and leaves the door open to the process. I wanted to focus on a couple of things, Mr Mayor. One was the business rate, and I know that the business community such as Kim Campbell, as you've already referenced, he's talked about a property with a CV of 180 million now will get hit by 48,000. Councillor Close says Sky City will they're 120,000 and they can cover that. And I think for most people that's the high end of town is probably not where the real concern might be, and where I want the business community to not only give us stealth tax headlines and that, but for the business associations and for the bids that we work closely with, and they support us and we support them, to give us some genuine and meaningful engagement and feedback on those SMEs and on those smaller businesses. As you've said, 90% in Auckland, or probably in New Zealand, employ less than 10 people. And so as I highlighted, for me it's where I want to hear the feedback is from those that are, say, sitting on $750,000 CV to $2 million, whose transport targeted rate will go up 145% from $183 to $450 if we do the sliding scale. And so we need to hear from those people, and I think at the time I alluded to Upland Cafe on Remuera Road as one that has a CV, and so they are individual businesses, often mum and dads, and we need to hear from them and their representatives, their bids, as to whether it's acceptable or doable from their perspective. On the UAGC, it's great that we're going out for consultation on that, and I hear your call, Mr Mayor, in your proposal for it's time for rating stability, but I also raised last week that where was the call for rating stability when higher valued Auckland properties particularly were being stung in the last 5 years, and some may say, oh well, that was a animal of statute and amalgamation, but as the Prime Minister and others have commented, that we did have that UAGC lever to pull to alleviate some pain for the higher valued properties, and that hasn't been pulled. And so I certainly think that a higher UAGC, after some very patient ratepayers many have been facing compounding 10% rates increases for the last 5 years, is certainly long overdue. And so the 350 to 650 bracket, I think we need the public again to come back and have their say, and for our communications department and our consultation team to really communicate what that means. And from some of the literature I've seen so far, it's certainly heading in a better way as to explanation. On the myth busting, Mr Mayor, some have seen that as a bit of an insult, and I know there's some reluctance now to kind of politicise it like that. But the super city is not delivering as much as the old councils, and there's a lot of the debt-funded infrastructure and big capital projects that have been listed, which are great. But I think listening to the bids that have come through Arthur's Economic Development Committee and to our local boards, there remains real concern around the service levels of our town centres, beaches, parks and reserves, for example. And a lot of those service levels are dealt to by rates, whereas the projects that you've listed are debt funded. And so the talk about are we doing better than others on projects, probably that critical mass, that extra debt that we've taken on, we would be delivering more on the capital project big infrastructure front and working closely with NZTA and government agencies. But on the service levels, I really want, as we all do, really want some good engagement from the public as to whether they feel their rates, which are funding the service levels of our town centres, parks, reserves, beaches and so forth, are actually improving and are not any worse than they may have been under the legacy councils. So we need some feedback on service levels, and I'm sure it will be forthcoming in the issue of rates. Finally, Mr. Chair, I want to do a bit of a shout out for the rural sector and some of the central wards and boards on the isthmus have been very reluctant for us to even look at the rural rates and very dismissive on those that are farming more than 50 hectares. And the proposal here for consultation is that their rural rate drops to 0.6 for those bigger farms. Well, they are the same people, Mr. Chair, often that I've heard around this table, local board chairs and others that have been very dismissive of that are also very pro-intensification and also very pro-greenbelt being protected around Auckland, and would like to see the rural sector continue to flourish. And so my point is that this may cost, if we're putting it across the entire rating base, not just the lifestyles, this may cost another $3 per ratepayer, but it's certainly worth us looking at. And I want to commend Councillor Cashmore for leading the debate, for going out to the community and for putting up a pretty reasonable proposition here that's not a big cost on the urban ratepayer, but again will enable many of our farmers going forward to stay on the land longer, and for all of us in the city and others, that's what we, in an ideal world, we want to see. And so I think we shouldn't, the urban ratepayers and constituents shouldn't be completely dismissive of that. They should think of the long-term picture and how they want Auckland's surrounds to look in the coming years, particularly when you consider the intensification that is imminent. So with that, and again, they're not asking for any relief necessarily, Mr. Chairman. They're just, I would argue, asking to be gouged less, because many of them are facing $25,000, $40,000, $50,000 rate bills. Many of them are extensive farmers that don't even have, that might have sheep and beef, but they don't have Fonterra trucks. And we know the stories well, thanks to our provincial councillors, and many of them probably could do with some less gouging. It's certainly not a free ride for them at any stretch of the imagination when you consider 25, 30, 45,000 and often one house, metal road and very few transport movements. I'm starting to like the rural sector. I got my launch as the councillor for Rodney. Thank you.
How big is it?
Go Riverhead.
That's my Rodney launch, Penny. I'm big on potholes these days and septic tanks.
Into your stream.
So thank you, Mr.
No footpath.
You know, if you live long enough in politics, you'll see and hear everything. That was a classic. Thank you very much, Councillor Cam.
It was excellent.
Councillor Callum.
Understands my trouble.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and I wasn't going to say anything today because I think it's pretty much self-explanatory that we're only going out for consultation. We want to get feedback from the people of Auckland, and I welcome that, but I'm going to, and the reason why I'm going to is because, like many of us around this table over the last 5 years, me in particular, I've attended every single governing body meeting. I've attended all bar one committee of the whole in 5 years. And I think I was about 2 hours short. I went to a funeral over the shore to one of the committees of the whole. And I've probably just attended most workshops in the last 5 years, at which then, you know, we have our debates, we have our discussions, and they hear our discussions on their transport levy and the likes, and I'm not going to repeat myself. And I'm not going to repeat myself. If people can't be here for that, that's their stiff luck. But I made it very clear where I sat with the transport levy and the reasons for that. And the likes. And maybe in the new council, we have a better attendance record for the people of Auckland who we serve. But, you know, we went through the LTP and we got ridiculed for that. Some of us got ridiculed for that. And whether we like it or not, we had to have an LTP. And it wasn't about the mayoral LTP, it was all our LTP. And to me, I took it on board the fact is that what would the implications be to Auckland? What would be the implications to the government? And what would the implications be to the globe? That's why I supported the LTP. There's stuff in that LTP that I didn't like, but I accepted it, swallowed it, and got on with it. There was stuff thrown in there at the last 5 minutes. 500,000 for the homeless, 400,000 for hydrodynamics, and so it goes on. But I swallowed it because the people of Auckland will make their own decisions, and we move forward. The transport levy, well, like Councillor Cashmore and like Councillor Webster and Councillor Sir John, we come from the furthest. And my golly, we all know what the transport is like, and we've got to deal with it. No one wants it. Everyone wants it, but no one wants to pay for it. It's the old story. We're about 15, if not 20 years behind the 8 ball in Auckland in regards to transport. And we've got to continue now to catch up. Good. That's the reality of it. Auckland is growing faster than we can keep up with. If we look at our provincial towns, the young between 18 and 40 are moving to Auckland from all over New Zealand. Then we have the opposite when we have the elderly and the retirees that are moving to the provincial towns for an easier lifestyle, maybe a cheaper lifestyle, not congested and the likes. But those provincial towns are going to struggle. Why are they going to struggle? Because a lot of them, their infrastructure is failing. And it's going to need major revamp done to it. And I heard recently, I think it was Hastings, a $68 or $70 million rebuild for their wastewater plant. You know, and if we stop and think about it, those retirees are on fixed incomes, superannuations. They're going to have to pay for it. I welcome this to go out to the public arena, and I'm welcome when it comes back from, and I want to hear comments from, we've heard about it around this table today, Kim Campbell, the MA. From Michael Barnett from the Chamber of Commerce.
That's a good guy.
But at the end of the day, how many tens of thousands of people are employed by small companies across Auckland? They put bread and butter on the daily plate of all Aucklanders. They're paying their bills.
Be cheaper for small companies.
He doesn't get it. You don't
Yeah,
get it.
yeah.
Read
I
your
didn't
agenda.
interject with you, Councillor Ross. I'm responding to you.
You didn't get it.
So we've got to look at the big picture. And in closing, I just want to say a huge, huge thanks to our CFO, Sue Tyndall, who I have the most up respect for. The honesty and the integrity and the manner that she brings to this council, Sue, and to the people of Auckland. I just want to acknowledge that, Sue, because that's whether you want the facts or you want the fiction. For me, I want the facts. And Sue displayed it this week out in the south. And the reputation and the people and the business people that came back to me said, we need to see more of it. And they said, fantastic. So I put the challenge out there, people. Get our CFO around the region and tell the real story. I close and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Councillor John Watson.